Let's begin this conversation with kindness, not judgment. If you're over 60 and still have questions about your body, your desires, and what's normal, you're not alone. This is a safe space, one where we speak openly and gently about things that are often whispered or ignored altogether. You see, aging doesn't shut off our emotions or needs. Just because our hair turns gray or our bodies change doesn't mean we stop feeling intimacy, curiosity, or physical urges. But in older age, especially after 60 or 65, our relationship with our body and our needs begins to evolve, and that includes topics like masturbation. Now, before we go any further, let's be clear. This isn't a lecture. This isn't about shame, embarrassment, or trying to make anyone feel guilty. It's about information. Real, research-backed knowledge that gives you power over your own choices. Doctors across the globe have started having more open conversations about how sexual habits, including solo practices like masturbation, affect us in later life. But most of us were raised in a time when these topics weren't discussed, and that silence has left many older adults unsure about what's healthy and what isn't. Take Paul, for example. He's 72, lives alone in a quiet suburb, and tries to stay active. But over the past few years, he noticed a pattern. Whenever he felt lonely, anxious, or bored, he would turn to old habits, not always because of desire, but out of routine. Later, he'd feel more exhausted than relieved, and something didn't sit right in his spirit. Then there's Irene, 68, a retired schoolteacher who found herself questioning whether her physical urges were something to be ashamed of or something she should be worried about health-wise. A visit to her doctor cleared up some myths, but also opened her eyes to how her body signals had changed. You see, as we age, everything in us becomes more sensitive. Not just our joints or digestion, but even our emotional and neurological responses. Masturbation, which may have once brought relief or even comfort, can carry new consequences in older age that many don't recognize. So today, we're going to gently explore 5 things doctors want you to understand about masturbation in older age, not because it's wrong, but because it's important to be informed, to be thoughtful, to be kind to your body in a new season of life. Because sometimes the quiet habits we carry from the past need to be reevaluated in light of who we are now. Let's begin with the heart, because that's where most things truly start. For many older adults, the act of masturbation isn't always about pleasure. It's often more about emotion than it is about desire. In fact, several doctors and psychologists who specialize in geriatric care have observed a pattern. What appears to be a physical habit is often a response to emotional emptiness. Take Janet, 70 years old, widowed for nearly a decade. Her days are quiet, and while she has family that visits occasionally, the evenings can feel long and hollow. She once confided in her counselor that the urge to self-stimulate wasn't really about physical need anymore. It's more like company, she said, like a moment where I don't feel invisible. This type of emotional loneliness is incredibly common and deeply human. But what's concerning is when these emotions are unknowingly masked by physical habits. When masturbation becomes a substitute for connection, it may offer a momentary distraction, but it rarely provides the emotional fulfillment we're truly longing for. Doctors emphasize that emotional well-being is a critical part of senior health. It's not just about avoiding illness or keeping bones strong. It's about feeling seen, heard, and valued. When the emotional need for intimacy, connection, or comfort is redirected into solo behaviors without awareness, it can sometimes deepen a sense of isolation rather than ease it. For Paul, who we mentioned earlier, his doctor gently encouraged him to explore other ways to connect, like joining a local senior book club or volunteering at the nearby library. It didn't erase his urges, but it gave him a sense of purpose and community that helped quiet the emotional triggers behind the habit. The key takeaway here is not that masturbation is inherently bad. Rather, it's about understanding why it's happening and whether it's truly serving your deeper needs. Emotional loneliness is nothing to be ashamed of. It's a signal, like hunger or thirst, that something inside you needs nourishment. And for many elders, recognizing this can be life-changing. It shifts the focus from temporary relief to long-term well-being, from silence to self-awareness. So ask yourself, gently, without judgment, is this truly what my body is asking for, or is it my heart calling out for connection? As we age, our bodies become more delicate in the way they process stimulation, not just in digestion or movement, but in sensory and emotional areas too. One thing many doctors have noted is that overstimulation from repeated solo activity, particularly late at night, can negatively impact both sleep and mood. Take Irene again. She had a habit of winding down with self-stimulation in the evenings, thinking it would help her fall asleep. But over time, she noticed the opposite happening. Her sleep became restless, her dreams felt intense, and her energy the next day was low and unpredictable. Doctors explain that masturbation can trigger a cascade of hormones like dopamine, oxytocin, and sometimes cortisol, depending on the emotional state you're in. In younger bodies, this hormonal shift can regulate quickly. But in older adults, especially those dealing with blood pressure issues, medications, or hormone imbalances, it can lead to disrupted sleep cycles and feelings of sadness or emotional flatness afterward. The connection between stimulation and sleep isn't often discussed in older circles, but it's very real. The body may be more sensitive to arousal-related chemical shifts, making restful sleep harder to maintain. Paul, after consulting with his doctor and a sleep therapist, tried replacing his evening routine with calming rituals instead. A warm shower, a soft instrumental playlist, and a journaling habit helped him wind down without overstimulating his body or mind. Sleep is sacred in older age. It fuels your heart, memory, mood, and immune system. Anything that interferes with it, even something that seems harmless or private, deserves thoughtful reflection. If you notice your energy dipping, your sleep feeling shallow, or your emotions taking longer to settle, it may be worth asking, is my body overstimulated when it really needs rest? Gentle rhythms and calming routines often serve older bodies better than sudden spikes in stimulation. And honoring that shift is not a loss, it's wisdom. Another physical consideration doctors point out relates to pelvic health and blood circulation. As we grow older, the tissues in the pelvic region become more fragile, blood flow slows slightly, and nerve sensitivity can increase or decrease depending on your health profile. Repeated stimulation, especially if forceful or habitual, can lead to irritation, swelling, or even subtle forms of inflammation in older men and women. For some, it may cause temporary numbness or discomfort during urination or bowel movements. For others, it may result in lingering aches that weren't present before. Janet experienced something similar. After a particularly stressful few weeks, she noticed increased sensitivity and discomfort in her lower abdomen. Her doctor gently suggested that frequent stimulation combined with sitting for long periods might be straining her pelvic floor. Circulation is essential for pelvic health, and when that area is repeatedly stimulated without adequate rest or movement, it can interrupt the natural balance of fluids and nerve signals. This doesn't happen to everyone, but it's more likely in older age when tissues are thinner and more reactive. Doctors often recommend pelvic floor exercises, gentle movement like Tai Chi, and plenty of hydration to help keep circulation flowing properly in that region. They also advise listening to your body's signals. If there is soreness, fatigue, or tingling, it might be your body's way of asking for rest. Your pelvic area is not just about pleasure. It's about stability, digestion, urinary health, and core strength. It deserves to be treated gently, especially in later life. What worked for your body at 40 might need adjustment at 70. That's not a limitation. That's your body asking for more care than it once did. Perhaps the most honest and important thing doctors want you to know is this: masturbation, like any repeated habit, can quietly slip into dependency. This doesn't mean addiction in a dramatic sense, but it does mean that some older adults find themselves leaning on the habit more than they realize. It becomes a go-to for boredom, stress, sadness, or even just to fill silence. And while the act itself isn't harmful in moderation, relying on it to manage emotional states can become a fragile crutch. Dependency often grows in quiet ways. Paul realized he was reaching for the habit every time he felt unsure about his day or disconnected from others. He wasn't seeking pleasure. He was soothing discomfort with repetition. Doctors suggest that if masturbation begins to feel like something you have to do to feel okay, rather than something you choose with awareness, it might be time to pause and reflect. There's strength in asking, what deeper need is trying to speak? Replacing compulsive routines with mindful ones doesn't mean you're broken. It means you're listening. Meditation, creative hobbies, nature walks, and even heartfelt phone calls can begin to replace the space once filled by habits that no longer nourish. It's not about stopping everything. It's about regaining your power to choose. Segment 6. A New Relationship with Yourself. Conclusion. Words, 390 characters, 3024. Let's return to where we began with kindness. You are not your habits. You are not your past. And you are not defined by what you do in private. But you are worthy of attention, care, and deep respect. As we age, our relationship with our bodies changes. What once brought comfort may now bring confusion. What once felt natural may now feel uncertain. That's okay. That's not failure. That's wisdom catching up with us. Doctors want older adults to feel empowered, not ashamed. To make choices that align with how they want to feel tomorrow, not just what soothes them today. And to understand that emotional, physical, and spiritual needs evolve beautifully with age. Janet now journals in the mornings. Paul reads poetry before bed. They still have physical urges, but they've learned to sit with them, listen to them, and respond with intention rather than instinct. And you can too. There's strength in exploring your own patterns with honesty. There's courage in seeking connection over compulsion. And there's deep beauty in aging with self-respect, curiosity, and tenderness. So if this conversation stirred something in you, let that be a doorway, not a wall. Let it invite you inward, gently. And if you know someone who might benefit from hearing this, share it. Let's replace silence with support. Subscribe to Elder Insight for more conversations like this, rooted in research, delivered with warmth, and always with your well-being in mind. You are not alone. You are never too old to grow.